10. The Nebraska Ambush. In 2018, a woman from Nebraska named Melissa Camargo Flores decided to take care of her romantic rival the old-fashioned way. She showed up to her home in Sioux City, Iowa, and stabbed her multiple times in front of the house. When Kenia Alvarez Flores woke up early on that Sunday morning, she had no idea she would be dead by 8 o'clock. Luckily, a witness who saw Melissa commit the attack followed her. The Good Samaritan continued to follow Melissa while on the phone with the police, giving a description of her vehicle and where she was going. This allowed the officers to catch her immediately. Melissa didn't make it far from the crime scene. When the police pulled her over, she still had the bloody knife on the passenger seat and bloody gloves. Sadly, the victim was dead by the time she got to the hospital. The attacker also had to be transported to hospital because she had accidentally stabbed herself in the leg during the vicious assault. But what about the motive? When questioned by the police, Melissa admitted to being in a relationship with Kenia's boyfriend. They were both dating the same guy, but Melissa got tired of sharing and decided to take out the competition once and for all. 9. Attack of the Astronauts. In one of the most shocking love rivalries gone wrong, a NASA astronaut attacked another astronaut at the Orlando International Airport while wearing a trench coat and wig. You just can't make this kind of stuff up. In 2007, Navy Captain Lisa Marie Nowak drove over 12 hours from Houston to Orlando to be there when her love rival's flight landed at 1 o'clock in the morning. Lisa was a mission specialist for NASA, who actually participated in a space shuttle launched the previous July. When police searched her car, they discovered a knife, a BB gun, latex gloves, and diapers. When questioned about the diapers, Lisa said she wore them so she wouldn't have to stop and pee during the drive to the airport. Lisa's rival was Air Force Captain Colleen Shipman. After Colleen's flight arrived, Lisa followed her into the parking lot, doused her with pepper spray, and then tried to get into her car. But obviously, this was an airport and the police were notified immediately. The cops showed up and Lisa was charged with attempted kidnapping. Lisa was angry because she was in a romantic relationship with the same man, Navy Commander William O'Faline, that Colleen was in a relationship with. This is despite the fact that Lisa is married and has 3 children. William is also an astronaut, but he pilots space shuttles. In the end, it seemed like a pretty huge overreaction to finding out the man you're cheating on your husband with is cheating on you with another woman. Lisa also turned out to be the only astronaut to ever have felony charges filed against them. 8. High-speed jealousy. In 2017, Melissa Pesticillo, 23 years old, went into a jealous rage and ran her love rival off the road, resulting in a brutal highway accident. Sophie Taylor was left dead and Melissa was thrown in jail, and it was all over a petty love rivalry. These people are all in their 20s. Melissa became angry after her ex-boyfriend Michael, just a year younger than her, started seeing Sophie. She became so angry that she texted everyone she could think of to say how she was going to kill Sophie if it was the last thing she did. She even sent text messages to her ex-boyfriend's sister to inform her of her plans to murder. These texts would turn around to really bite Melissa in the butt. Prosecutor Matthew Cobb described it as a period of hostility, but the hostility never ended. In the Welsh city of Cardiff, Melissa chased Sophie for 3 miles down the highway. She started ramming into the back of Sophie's black BMW, which caused the crash. Sophie's BMW smashed into a wall with such force that the girl's body broke on impact and was dead instantly. The case is currently being rinsed through the court system. Melissa denies all the accusations put against her. But really, there's not much she can do when so much evidence is stacked against her. We're still waiting to see how the trial ends and what kind of sentence Melissa will be handed down, if any. 7. A dangerous love triangle at the zoo. An ex-meerkat keeper at a London zoo has been ordered to pay money in compensation to a monkey handler, whom she attacked viciously in a bizarre love triangle fiasco with a llama keeper. Yes, you heard that right. The meerkat keeper and the monkey handler were love rivals, competing for the guy who takes care of the llamas. Apparently, there's a whole lot more going on behind the scenes at your local zoo than meets the eye. This all happened in the fall of 2015. The woman who took care of the meerkats is named Caroline Westlake. She used a wine glass to try and stab Kate Sanders following an argument over the llama keeper, Adam Davies. According to what came out in court, Caroline became distraught after Adam refused to break things off with Kate. Kate and Adam had been seeing each other for 5 years, but behind her back, he started a relationship with Caroline. It turned out to be the biggest mistake of his life. To make things even more bizarre, the assault happened at the staff Christmas party. It was the one time when the 3 animal experts were stuck at the same place. Things got tense, an argument broke out, and Caroline used the wine glass in her hand to strike Kate across the face. Nobody was seriously hurt in the altercation, and Caroline wasn't given any jail time. She was sentenced to instead give the victim over $800 in compensation. What's the wildest, most dramatic thing you've ever seen at a staff Christmas party? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe before the end of the video. 6. Caught in the act. In 2013, Brad Coleman had a love rival and he didn't even know it. He was visiting a friend at their apartment in the community of Auburn when he noticed his wife's car parked at another unit. She wasn't supposed to be there. He didn't know what she was doing there, but he had a pretty good idea. Suddenly furious, hit in the face with the realization that his wife had been cheating on him with another man, Brad found himself a lead pipe. And already you probably know exactly where this is going. Judging by where his wife's car was parked, he figured he knew which apartment she was in. He knocked on the door, and as soon as the lock clicked, he forced his way in. His wife shrieked. The man in the apartment had no idea what was happening, and then he was getting beaten in the head with a lead pipe. Brad stopped the vicious assault before the man was dead, which really worked out in his favor. He turned himself into the authorities, knowing full well he had done something terrible and wasn't going to get away with it. Sheriff Johnson, the one in charge of the case, said he could certainly sympathize with somebody going through something of that nature, but he also said there's a process for these things, and you can't just go clubbing people in the head with pipes. 5. Dropping off the milk. An 18-year-old woman from Ocala was arrested in 2019 after attacking the girlfriend of her baby's father while they were making a milk delivery to her house. According to the Marion County Sheriff's Office, this is what happened. Dantaya Keys was getting some milk dropped off by her ex and her ex's new girlfriend. When she saw them pull up to the curb, she ran out of her house, sprinted to the car, threw the door open, and attacked. The girlfriend was sitting, totally unaware of what was about to happen to her. Suddenly, the door was wrenched open, and Dantaya started unloading punches to her face and head. It took about a minute for the boyfriend to break the skirmish up, and by then the girlfriend was in pretty rough shape. The first deputy who arrived noticed the victim had a bruised left eye, a swollen face, and her forehead and nose were all discolored. When asked why she went so crazy, Dantaya simply said she didn't want the victim near her house. She could have just stayed in her own home and not assaulted somebody, but that's not the way things went. She was transported to the Marion County Jail and charged with battery. That's some serious baby daddy drama. 4. Jealous dentist. Dr. Alika Kure from New Rochelle was indicted for the attempted murder of her love rival in one of the strangest cases involving dentists you've ever heard of. In 2020, Alika was a successful Connecticut dentist. Now she's probably going to spend the rest of her life in jail. According to the indictment, the dentist became aware that her former fiancé had gotten himself a new girlfriend, a woman who had been a professional, upstanding citizen her entire life had something snap in her brain. She found the new girlfriend, broke into her car, and hid in her back seat. When the woman entered the vehicle, Alika attacked. But this was the first time the dentist had done something so crazy, and she wasn't very good at it. Her victim got out of the car and started running, and Alika gave chase. Here's where things got real. As the new girlfriend was running away, Alika pulled a razor blade and tried to slash her in the neck. But the victim raised her hand, protecting her neck and receiving a slice across her palm. By this time, the neighbors had taken notice that something dramatic was happening. A lot of attention was being brought down on the area, and Alika ran away. Now the dentist is free on bond, but is due to return to the courtroom soon. She'll most likely be charged at the minimum with attempted murder. 3. Christmas Day Chaos. Christmas is one of the deadliest seasons in the U.S. Family, drama, and loneliness. It can be quite sad for some people. On Staten Island last year, one man's Christmas turned to chaos when he was choked to death and his limp body was dumped in the hallway of his love rival's apartment. Rafael Ramos was found unresponsive on the second floor of the apartment complex on Clove Road at 7 in the morning. He was found by the police after residents who had been looking forward to a peaceful Christmas morning called 911. A man with a knife was banging on people's doors. By the time paramedics arrived, Rafael was dead. His killer was one of the tenants in the building, Emmanuel Diaz. The cops found him in his apartment with a woman and a pair of kids. The police investigation revealed both men were involved with the same female. The guy who wound up dead found out about it and decided to end things himself. He showed up to Emmanuel's door with a knife, but it didn't do much good. Rafael jabbed the knife in his face, and Emmanuel disarmed him and strangled him to death. The cops described it as a crime of passion. In the end, Christmas was ruined for everyone. Emmanuel was charged with murder and hauled off to jail. 2. Stolen identity. Yet another woman from Nebraska killed her love rival. This one's name is Shauna Golyar from Omaha. She's been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for murdering Kure Farver. But the case has some twists and turns. The Nebraska killer tried to cover her tracks by assuming the other woman's identity on social media. Both women were dating the same man. This was way back in 2012. Shauna had waited outside the apartment of her boyfriend for Kure to come out. When she did, Shauna stabbed her to death and then took her body and disposed of it in an unknown location. To this day, Kure's corpse still has not been found. Shauna then assumed Kure's identity and started sending texts to the woman's family and friends. She was trying to make it look as though Kure was still alive. She tried to convince her friends and family that she had left her life in Nebraska behind and would be cutting everyone out of her life. She even made a post on Facebook in 2013 that literally said, "I'm not missing. I just don't want to come home right now." Perhaps the most shocking part is just how long this ruse worked. Shauna didn't get charged with murder until 2017, and even though the police had enough evidence to convict her, they still don't have a body. She refuses to give up the location of Kure's body, which by now is probably nothing but a skeleton. 1. Trouble on the border. In 2007, a San Diego Border Patrol agent was so upset that he got dumped by his girlfriend for another man that he did something he really shouldn't have. Jaime Cesar Quiroz, a resident of Santa Ana, has been charged with first-degree burglary, aggravated assault, and aggravated trespassing. He's now facing up to 8 years in prison, and it's all because he couldn't stand being the loser of a love rivalry he had never wanted in the first place. The authorities haven't released the name of the woman involved, but we do know she and the accused dated for 8 years. But 5 months before the attack, she broke things off. She then turned from the border agent to an actual police officer. Enraged and jealous, Jaime began a campaign of harassment against them. He would call her, he would pester her new boyfriend, and he would even show up at her house unexpectedly. On September 16th, she woke up to find him sitting in her living room. She was so disturbed and scared for her life that she left the house. The next night, she made sure that her boyfriend slept over. By late in the evening, as they were lying in bed, Jaime broke in like a mad bull and attacked. The girlfriend managed to get away and called the police, while Jaime viciously assaulted the Santa Ana police officer. He then ran out of the house and tried to hide in the neighbor's place. It didn't work. The police surrounded the house, and he was forced to give himself up.
10. Violence against the pregnant. A football player for the Miami Hurricanes was arrested in 2021 after he beat a pregnant girlfriend. His name is Avonte Williams, and he was arrested in July on a single count of aggravated battery on a pregnant woman. According to the arrest report, officers with the Miami-Dade Police Department arrived at the apartment where Williams was living with his girlfriend. They'd been arguing because even though his girlfriend was pregnant with his child and they lived together, Williams was messing around with another woman. When confronted with his treachery, the football player kicked his pregnant girlfriend out of his apartment instead of owning up to what he did. At least he gave her the courtesy of packing some stuff up before she left. He went out for a bit, hoping that when he got back she would be gone. But when he returned, his girlfriend, now ex-girlfriend, was still packing her items into boxes. He was so mad that he grabbed her by the hair and started throwing her around. He then dragged her outside and threw her on the ground, and that was when the neighbors called the cops. Williams was ranked the top safety in the 2020 class. But after it came to light what he'd done, UM's athletics department dismissed him from the football program. He was also suspended from all team activities. In other words, he can look forward to never being a sports star ever again. 9. Bad volleyball players. 2 women's volleyball players for FAU walked into a fitting room at Macy's retail store in Boca Raton back in 2017. According to the Boca Raton Police Department, when they entered the fitting room, their bags were pretty much empty, but when they walked out, their bags were practically bursting. Emily Hayes and Corinne Varney were arrested by the police for shoplifting. They tried to get away with over $1,400 in women's activewear clothing, along with a few choice pieces of Calvin Klein. They were busted by the asset protection representative at the retail store, who found the 2 young girls incredibly suspicious. They were carrying bags that were too big, they were acting dodgy, and they were clearly stuffing clothes into their bags while in the fitting rooms. The young women were arrested and charged with grand theft, then kicked out of Macy's forever. But all these years later, the horrible mistake of shoplifting hasn't completely ruined their lives. In fact, it actually looks like getting caught helped to push the young women back on the right path. 8. Spitting on the fans. UCLA basketball player Mac Etienne got in some big trouble in early 2022 for allegedly spitting on fans during a game. It's important to note that the fans were from the rival team. It was still a pretty unsportsmanlike thing to do. It happened after his team lost to the University of Arizona at the McKale Center in Tucson. After he lost, as he was returning to the locker room, he started spitting on the fans. Then, once he was in the locker room, the university police officers detained him for assault with the intent to injure, provoke, or insult another person. He was arrested and taken away, though the police never put him in handcuffs. It's a weird situation, and one that's still ongoing. As of right now, Mac has pleaded not guilty to what became a misdemeanor assault charge. The case will probably be going on for the better part of the rest of 2022. 7. The 2006 murder of Brian Patter. In 2021, an arrest was finally made in the case of Brian Patter, the murdered football player for the University of Miami. He was shot to death almost 15 years ago outside his apartment building in 2006. His murder had gone unsolved ever since. But now, police in Miami have finally confirmed that it was Rashawn Jones, Brian Patter's teammate from between 2004 to 2006, who did the killing. According to the detectives on the case, Brian, just 22 years old at the time and an NFL hopeful, was walking from his car to the staircase of his apartment building on November 7th. As he approached the building, he was shot in the back of the head. It was brutal, but at least he didn't feel any pain. There was no suffering or even fear. He was just walking, and then he wasn't alive any longer. After the murder, Brian's family was in disarray, especially because they had a pretty strong hunch that Rashawn Jones was responsible. But the police failed to put the evidence together that they needed to make an arrest. It took them a decade and a half to finally build up a case against him. The case basically consisted of phone records, a ping from a cell phone tower placing him at the scene of the homicide, and an eyewitness who identified Jones in a lineup. 6. A homeless man with a knife. Celia Barquin Arozamena was a star college golfer from Spain who met her untimely end while playing around near her campus in Iowa. It happened back in September of 2018. Celia was finishing her degree at Iowa State University and was one of the best golfers in school. She had been working toward joining the Pro Tour and was almost certainly guaranteed a spot. But on Monday morning, when she went to play her round alone, she ran into somebody she'd never expected. A homeless man had wandered onto the golf course with a knife. He stabbed Celia to death and then chucked her body in a pond. Her corpse was only discovered when another player found her abandoned golf bag and followed the trail of carnage. A man named Colin Daniel Richards, just 22, and already known to police for his history of violence, was arrested shortly after and charged with murder. According to investigators, Richards had an urge to kill a woman. That was his only motive. He'd wandered out from his homeless encampment near the golf course until he stumbled upon Celia, who just so happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. 5. Murder at a gas station. A former football player for the University of Georgia has been charged for a brutal shooting death that happened in March of 2021. His name is Akil Nasir Crumpton, and he was the wide receiver for the Bulldogs in 2017 and 2018. But in 2022, he was arrested in Philadelphia for murdering a gas station clerk. Crumpton walked into the gas station dressed entirely in black and holding a handgun. He simply walked to the counter of the racetrack gas station near the outskirts of Watkinsville and shot 23-year-old Elijah Wood to death. It was cold-blooded murder. Sadly, this is a tragic example of a promising career going straight down the toilet. Crumpton had earned himself All-State and All-Catholic honors while playing football at his high school. Then he played in college in California before being transferred over to Georgia. He remained relatively successful until 2021, at which point he dropped out and didn't graduate. After he left school, he became a murderer. We still don't know why he shot Elijah. He didn't even know him. Elijah was working graveyard shift by himself when Crumpton walked up and shot him for no reason. In the security footage, you can see him committing this crime, walking back and forth a few times in the store, and then leaving without taking a single thing. It's been devastating for Elijah's family, especially since it all seems so pointless. 4. Basketball star turned murderer. Tashawn Hightower was the Tulane College basketball star who turned into a murderer. The 22-year-old was arrested in April of 2020 on a homicide charge. Up until the murder, he'd been leading the Green Wave in scoring and had recently been declared for the NBA draft. But his dreams of stardom were shattered on April 8th when he got involved with a group of people who committed a homicide in Stockbridge, Georgia. The victim was Devontae Anthony Long, dead from gunshot wounds after he was caught in a violent confrontation. According to reports, Tashawn was with a group of 6 men, including his brother, when they confronted Devontae. Devontae had apparently pistol-whipped one of Tashawn's friends, and the confrontation erupted in gunfire. It's unclear who exactly pulled the trigger, although Tashawn's lawyer claims it was his brother. Whatever the case, and whoever pulled that trigger, all 6 men were involved in the murder and they're all going down. Hightower was immediately let go from his team and skipped over for the NBA draft. He was just over 1 week away from getting into the NBA, and he blew it to commit a murder. 3. The bizarre story of Nigel Brandon. Austin, PA football player Nigel J. Ron Brandon was arrested on charges of aggravated assault after he slashed another player's neck during a fight over a room key. It happened on July 22nd, 2021. It was about 7 o'clock at night in the University Landing Apartments. The victim and the football player, who happened to be roommates, were looking around for Brandon's key. The key had seemingly got lost, and Brandon wouldn't let his roommate leave until it was found. This turned into a really violent argument, at which point Brandon pulled out a knife. When the man tried to leave the situation, Brandon slashed him across the neck and cut his wrist. Luckily, the victim was able to fight back, push Brandon out of his way and sprint out the door. About 6 minutes later, the victim flagged down a Clarksville police officer and reported what had happened. He required stitches to his neck and had to get the deep laceration on his left wrist sealed. When the police asked Brandon what had happened, he said he was angry because he thought his roommate stole the key to his room. It proved to be a pretty terrible decision for Nigel. He was suspended from the team and things spiraled from there. Shortly after this incident, on November 1st, he was discovered dead in Oklahoma City. According to the police, he was inside a vehicle with a man named Paris Tolver conducting illegal activity. Something went wrong between the 2 men, and Paris pulled out a gun and shot him. The ex-football player was killed, and Paris was booked on first-degree murder. Even though Nigel Brandon was clearly a troubled individual, this is still a tragic case. He was a rising football star with a promising future, and it all started spiraling down the drain the moment he let his anger get the better of him and picked up that knife. 2. An unwanted butt slap. Cleveland Brown wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. was issued an arrest warrant by the New Orleans police. It was following a post-game celebration after LSU won the NCAA football championship in 2020. It all started because a complaint came in that Beckham had behaved inappropriately at the celebration. He'd slapped a woman on her behind while inside the LSU locker room at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. It wasn't just any woman either, it was a police officer. The officer whirled around and confronted Beckham about his inappropriate touching, but he wasn't arrested at the time. She decided later to file a complaint and go through with the arrest. Beckham started at LSU before he was selected by the New York Giants and later traded to the Browns. The arrest warrant fiasco was actually retracted before he got charged with anything. He got away clean, but this should stand as a pretty good lesson not to slap a stranger's behind, even in a locker room. 1. A weapon on campus. A Georgia football player was arrested in November of 2021 on 3 felony charges related to property damage and carrying a weapon in a safety zone. His name is Nyland Green, and he was the freshman defensive tackle for the Bulldogs. He was in the national top 100 class in the 2021 signing class and had appeared in 3 games up until his arrest. Here's what he did, according to the University of Georgia Police Department report. Security and the university responded to a complaint just after 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, November 14th. A man was on campus with a gun, dry firing it in the direction of another man. Dry firing is when someone pulls the trigger but there are no bullets in the weapon. It's not technically firing the weapon, but it's still extremely frowned upon, especially on a school campus. When the university police showed up, they found the football player in possession of a BB gun. It wasn't quite as bad as a real gun, but still a weapon. They also discovered a second BB gun hiding in his dorm room. It was enough that the school officers wished to pursue criminal charges. Then, shortly after, in what appeared to be the result of a fit of rage, the police were called yet again. Nyland Green had smashed out some windows by shooting them with BB guns.
10. Throwing a puppy. A white woman in California was busted racially abusing a man and then throwing a puppy at him. As if hurling racial insults at somebody isn't horrific enough, the young Karen went ahead and abused an animal as well, using a living puppy as a weapon. The video was recorded in 2020, showing the irate woman losing her mind at a local California rapper named Glomula. It's not clear exactly what started the bizarre interaction. When he started recording, the woman was walking towards him through the middle of the street as he had simply been trying to get back into his car. She yelled at him, "You're black," for seemingly no reason, and that was when everything spiraled out of control. The two got into an argument. The rapper became concerned that she was holding the puppy in a really unsafe way, and then she kicked him and tossed the dog in his face. It was incredibly bizarre, and the woman didn't really appear to know what was happening or even where she was. Then just as quickly as she had attacked a random man unprovoked, she ran off down the street. Her face is all over the internet and she's probably lost all her friends, while Glomula got himself a cute new puppy. So in the end, it all really worked out. 9. Jennifer Couture. Jennifer Couture is the insane Florida woman who went viral in early 2022 when she tried to run somebody over with her car outside a Dunkin' Donuts. The video was first shared on TikTok, with Jennifer, a blonde white woman who may or may not have fake eyebrows and fake lips, clearly seen exiting her black Mercedes and then attacking the unidentified person filming. Jennifer can be heard telling the person to relax, to chill out with their attitude, and then she tried to snatch the phone from the other woman's hand. The victim screamed out, "Ah, you just assaulted me!" And then Jennifer mocks the woman and returns to her Mercedes SUV. But this wasn't the end of the interaction. Jennifer then tried to back her SUV over the woman who was filming her. Her attempt failed, but she still tried to run a stranger over. She has since been charged with 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. 2 counts because after she failed the first time to run the woman over, she tried again. As for why Jennifer turned full Karen, we don't know all the details. It seems to have been over some frivolous disagreement in the parking lot of the donut shop. 8. Hot soup. On November 7, 2021, Amanda Martinez threw hot soup in the face of a manager at a restaurant. She did it because she was angry that her plastic lid had melted. Amanda was so furious about the poor quality of her lid that she tried to scald somebody's face off. The disturbing moment was caught on surveillance footage inside the Sol de Jalisco restaurant in Temple, Texas. Amanda demanded to speak with the manager, a typical Karen move. Then when manager Janelle Brolin tried to de-escalate the situation, Amanda tried her hardest to keep it escalating. After a whole lot of yelling, Amanda threw the steaming hot soup directly in the 24-year-old manager's face. Keep in mind, this was soup so hot it melted the plastic lid of the container. It wasn't just hot enough to burn your lips, it would have burned your whole tongue off. The manager described the feeling of the soup hitting her in the face like taking a full stream of pepper spray straight to the eyes. It was so hot that her eyes burned and she got an instant nosebleed. By the time the police arrived, Amanda was long gone. But just days later, an arrest warrant was issued and she was booked into the Bell County Jail. If found guilty on the charge of assault, Amanda will be looking at around 1 year in jail and $4,000 in fine. 7. Taser Karen. Just before the end of 2020, a white woman did something so outrageous, she earned herself the Karen of the Year award. It happened in California and involved an old woman, a taser, and a poodle. The incident was recorded by Discovery Bay woman Jeriel's security cameras and on her cell phone. You see, the old woman walked up to the front door of Jeriel's house with a taser in her hand. When Jeriel's brother opened the door to see what she wanted, the woman immediately lashed out. She claimed that their pit bull had attacked her dog and then proceeded to berate them for being black. This woman literally said, "You're a black person in a white neighborhood, and you're really acting like one. Why don't you act like a white person if you're going to live in a white neighborhood?" It was pretty terrible, but it got worse. The family asked if she would please leave, and she refused. She insisted that the family dog had attacked her dog, even though her dog was perfectly fine. Then she started rambling about her top secret clearance level and informing the family that they're all going to hell. She did eventually leave, but the whole thing left Jeriel and her family shaken and feeling unwanted in a neighborhood where they had been living for the last 10 years. 6. Home Depot Karen. Terry Lynn Wright was arrested for the second time in 6 days when she trespassed at a Texas Home Depot and refused to wear her mask in 2021. The incident at the Home Depot happened less than a week after the incident that originally shot her to fame at a Bank of America in Galveston on March 11. The 65-year-old white woman apparently didn't learn much from the first incident, in which she got kicked out of the bank for being maskless. She tried to walk into the Home Depot also without putting on a mask, and when employees asked her to leave, she refused. At about this time in the pandemic, store employees were pretty much done dealing with Karens. They phoned the police right away and let them deal with the situation. The cops told Terry that she would go to jail for trespassing if she didn't leave immediately, to which Terry replied that she was well within her federal rights and that the police officer was actually in violation of the law. It was about that time Terry was put into handcuffs and put into a patrol car. It was as she was being put into the car that the officer can be heard on his body cam saying, "Oh, you're the lady who was causing issues in Galveston the other day." She replied with, "No, I was the lady the other day following my rights." At the end of the day, this Karen didn't do much to get her into trouble. We didn't hear about any other incidents, so she hopefully learned her lesson after 2 strikes. 5. Amy Cooper. Amy Cooper is the white woman who called the police when she came across a bird watcher in the park who happened to have black skin. She was walking through Central Park in New York on Memorial Day 2020. She was in a wooded area of the park where dogs are required to be leashed. Amy Cooper did not have a dog on its leash, and Christian Cooper, the name's totally coincidental, asked if she could please leash her animal. It wasn't an outrageous request. Nonetheless, Amy flipped out. She ordered Christian to stop recording her as he pulled his phone out to document the interaction. She also threatened to call the cops, then really did call them and proceeded to lie to the authorities on camera. She said to the cops that there was an African-American man with a bicycle helmet who was threatening her and her dog. Then, for absolutely no reason, Amy began to scream into her phone as if she was about to be kidnapped. She went off like a crazy person, screeching to send the cops immediately because she was in mortal danger. It was all quite strange and a huge overreaction, and Amy's life took a pretty hard downward turn afterward. In an interview with CNN, Amy tried to defend her actions by saying she wasn't a racist, but the damage was already done. After the video surfaced online, she was fired from her job at her investment firm. 4. Hate Crime Karen. At a protest taking place at the Hartford Capitol building back in 2021, Yulia Gilstein, a 45-year-old white woman, spat on a black female activist. As you can imagine, the activist was pretty upset. The whole incident was caught on video, with Yulia heard screaming, "All lives matter," just before she hawked a loogie at Karen Prescott, the founder of Power Up Manchester. Police arrested the older woman almost immediately, and she was promptly charged with breach of the peace. But that wouldn't be the end of her story. Spitting on a black woman at a protest got her charges upgraded to a hate crime, as well as to third-degree attempt to commit assault. Not wanting to go to jail, Yulia made a dramatic apology at her court hearing and called her actions completely out of character. In other words, the same defense every Karen in the history of Karens has ever given. But what upset her victim even more than the act itself was the fact that Yulia didn't get much more than a slap on the wrist. She was ordered to complete 100 hours of anti-hate education over 2 years and then let go. 3. White woman with a gun. The employee of a Mississippi campground was fired from her job at the beginning of summer of 2019 for pulling out a gun on a couple who were trying to have a picnic. The woman with the gun happened to be white, while the couple happened to be black. The woman's name is Ruby Nellie Howell, and she was 70 years old at the time of her bizarre public freakout. It happened on May 26th, and the whole thing was caught on video. Ruby approached Franklin and Jessica Richardson, who were looking for a nice picnic spot and perhaps a cabin on the edge of Oktibbeha County Lake. They looked like a totally ordinary couple, just out and about with their family dog. Yet Ruby marched straight up to them with a handgun in her fist and told them to leave immediately. She said they didn't have a reservation, even though she never asked about a reservation. She couldn't possibly have known their situation. She simply saw a black couple and decided to pull out a gun and chase them off the property. Thankfully, Ruby was caught in the act, and considering she'd been working at the campground for quite some time, this probably wasn't the first time something like this had happened. It just so happened to be the first time somebody captured it on video. Ruby was fired the second that video went public and was arrested by the Oktibbeha County Sheriff's Office and charged with threatening exhibition of a weapon. But as you can probably guess, she was released on a bond of only $500 and let go the same day. 2. The Spirit Airlines Karen. On September 11, 2021, a white woman decided to commemorate the anniversary of the terror attacks in New York City by being racist on an airplane. The victim of this particular Karen has been identified as Acha Torre, a woman who happens to be both black and Muslim. Acha claims that while on a Spirit Airlines flight which just landed in Detroit, the Karen singled her out and launched a rather aggressive verbal assault. It all started after an older woman dropped her luggage and it accidentally hit the Karen. This caused her to fly off the handle, first screaming at the older woman who had dropped her luggage, a woman who was old enough to be her mother, before lashing out at Acha Torre. She screamed totally unprovoked at Acha to mind her own business and also called her a Muslim terrorist. She worked herself up into such a frenzy that she physically attacked Acha, despite a number of passengers filming her with their phones. The police came and took the Karen off the airplane and charged her with assault and disorderly conduct. But that's not enough for Acha. According to the Detroit Free Press, Acha is now trying to charge the woman with a hate crime for spewing anti-Muslim rhetoric during a physical assault. 1. The case of the two Karens. The case of the two Karens is a little different and a little strange. It started years ago in 2013 when a woman named Karen Y. Clark had her identity stolen by another woman named Karen A. Clark. Karen A. convinced Karen Y. to hand over her personal information to help build her credit score. But instead of doing that, Karen A. used that information to rent an apartment and to commit financial crimes throughout Missouri. You could call Karen A. Clark the ultimate Karen, a truly slimy human being. She used the information from the other Karen to steal money, to commit fraud, to commit forgery, and to rob her former employer of about $30,000. Instead of helping to boost Karen Y's credit score, she ran it into the ground. She took out as many loans as she possibly could, rented places and trashed them, and was just generally awful for 8 long years. It wasn't until 2021 that police finally picked her up and charged Karen A. with identity theft. The police were able to identify at least 7 aliases that she used throughout her life as an identity thief. She went by names like Karen Ann Kendall, Karen Lavinia Clark, and Karen Vinewald. She may have been a clever con artist, but she couldn't seem to come up with any better names than Karen. Would you rather get stuck next to a Karen on an airplane or someone who hasn't showered in 3 weeks and snores with their mouth open the whole flight? Let us know which is worse in the comments. And thanks for watching. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and we'll see you next time. Bye.